Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Welcome to Backstage with Culture Suite, and thank you for joining. I am your host, Soph. I'm the head of customer success here at Culture Suite, and today I'm very excited to introduce Liesanne, our lead Peppered consultant, who is going to talk us through the Stories module and how to use it. During the session, please feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments below. Feel free to ask in Dutch or in English, and we'll happily answer them as we go. So welcome, Lies.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. Glad to have you all here today to talk about stories. There's a lot to cover today, a lot of content to share. So if you have any questions, indeed, feel free to ask them during the session so we can answer them straight away. The main question is why, when, and how to use stories. So let's just dive in there. So today is all about content. With Peppered, in the Peppered platform that is called Stories, we called the pages that are defined with a specific story type as stories. So the content is what we're going to cover today, and in Peppered that's called the Stories module. So there are several modules and components we're going to cover that will make sure that you use the stories in the best way possible, which can be for specific visitors, for the general audience, to share your news items or any other content you want to share with your target audience. You can also make sure that some content is hidden, so not everything needs to be publicly visible. So I'm going to also tell you how to do that. Do note that the last bit about the customization, so for specific audiences, is only for integrated theaters, but I will let you know once we get there what that means and what you can learn from it, even if you're not integrated. So yeah, Soph already introduced me, but I'm Liesanne. I'm the lead Peppered consultant. I've been working at Peppered for 3.5 years, and now at Culture Suite, of course. So if you have any questions or want to know any secret about the dashboard, I probably know where to look or can tell you a bit more about that. So even if you see me do little tricks in the dashboard, let me know and I can tell you what I did. So the agenda of today is firstly news versus stories. The news module, as the older Peppered users might know, is deprecated. So we're going to get rid of the news items, news module, to make room for the stories, which I will tell the difference, how you're going to use that and how you're going to personalize and customize those. The first step with stories in general is a strategy. So we're going to cover that first. Then I'm going to explain to you how you can set it up, but also how to customize and personalize those items and those pages, and how to link it together. Link it together means the different modules we're going to use. So the production pages, the pages, slightly people. I'm not going to cover people that extensive today, so mostly production pages and content pages. I want to talk about content pages, that is the stories part today. So we're first going to start with the news versus stories. So the news module is going to be legacy soon, so it needs to be ported over to stories. So what is the advantage of the stories compared to the news? The stories module has more flexibility, but that's mostly for the pages itself. So if we go one step back to the pages, to the stories in general, with news you only had one item, which is a news item, but sometimes you have more content to share which is not necessarily news. So it could be a podcast, it could be videos, it could be interviews, which you don't want to share on a news page, but you do want to link to specific productions or have on the website as more of a content library or more backstage information, some little secrets about the theater that you maybe not want to share in a general news page. And you can group them together more with the stories module, but you can also use them in the old way as a news item by defining a story type as news. On the pages itself, the parts are more flexible on the stories page. I assume that most of you are already familiar with working with pages. The stories are an extension of that, and you can add a definition to that page, a story type, but the parts are more flexible. So we have a lot of extensive parts library where you can choose a lot of different parts there. So you can add videos, iframes with, if you want, Google Maps links, for instance, or other content you want to share, Spotify links, videos, a lot of images, so there's more flexibility there than with the previous news model. You also have the HTML edit field, so you can add buttons, you can add grids, you can add quotes, whatever you like, and it's easy to drag and drop those different parts to show the content you want to share. All the parts have their own parameters. The default ones that you, I think, all familiar with the padding at the top, padding at the bottom, the background image, background color. But you can add more parameters if you want, and you can change those for each part. With the news items before, it was all set in stone. The order was set in stone, but also the background color, for instance, or the different parameters. And now you can do that for each story specifically. So you can have different stories for different audiences and style those for those different audiences as well. The personalization is more about the hiding of the specific parts, where you can hide specific parts for specific audiences or show them for certain audiences. So you can even have a sort of upsell page, for instance, where some parts are hidden for specific audiences, but you can show the others to them. So it's more personal for the visitor, and they get the feel that their story is specifically for them. And you can plan all your content. So you can plan the parts, but also the pages, so you don't have to sit tight on a Saturday morning if you want to release a news article. You can plan it ahead of time, but you can also plan specific parts of that. So you can already give a little teaser of the story and then hide that one once the actual story is live. So you can all do that ahead of time instead of waiting for the actual moment you want to launch it. So that's mostly the stories versus news, but the stories itself are going to dive more into depth about what that is. But like I said, we're going to start with the strategy. So I call it go with the flow because it's mostly about your visitor flow on the website. So how are they entering the website? Where are they going? How do you want to share your content? That's the first step to actually tell the story. So the who and why is the first question you should ask for the strategy side of things. So what do you want to achieve with the story? Do you want to give more background information about the production? Do you want to use it as a news story? Do you want a news article on your website? It can also be used, for instance, for people that bought the production or the event, tickets for the event, and you want to share some additional content. For instance, I heard from a theater that used it for an extra information after they bought it, and after they bought the event, and when they came to the theater, they could find some more information on the story page that was hidden for the regular audience, basically. Who is the target audience? Because the story, if it's for visitors that bought an event, is different than for the general audience. And also, most people that go to a story page want to know more. So it's a different audience than is reading about, I want to purchase a production. Or if they want to know more about the theater, you can hide the content of a specific production, for instance. So who you're writing the article for, and how can you make sure that they have all the information they need and it's still relevant for them? And what type of content is it? Is it indeed a news article? Is it related content? Is it extra event information? I already covered a bit of that, but it's important to think about what type of content is it, so how to group them together and how to share that on your website. If you have the who and the why, the next question is the where and the when, because that comes after that. Because do you want to plan it? Is there a specific time that the content needs to be released? So for instance, for news articles, it can be time-bound. If it's for a specific production, it can be also time-bound, or it can be only on the day itself. If it's personalized, so you know your target audience, do you want it to be still visible for everyone, or do you want to hide it for everyone that isn't relevant to? The related content is mostly about linking it together, so linking productions and pages together to make sure that the visitor knows where to find more information about the story behind the production. So a production page is mostly used about that specific production, and the story behind it is usually in a story page to not make the production page too extensive and too long, and a lot of scrolling, especially on mobile. Do you also want to build up an archive, or do you want to time everything that it's news, for instance, that it's gone after a certain time, or do you want to copy them all together in a specific page, what you call your archive? So it's also important to think about what happens when the article is done. Do you want to just keep it there, or do you want to do anything with it after a certain time? And the flow of the visitor. So that's important to know how to share your content. So do they come in on the homepage? Do you send an email to a specific page? Are they looking at their visitor account? So it's important to think of how does the visitor come into the website and how are they looking for the information to know how to share the information you actually want to share to that specific visitor, which is different for each theater. So it's important to think of your strategy as a theater as a whole and how you want to share that story of the production or of your theater. If you have the strategy in place, get started. Because, like I said, the visitor flow has a lot of different options. You can come in through a short URL. You can have a poster somewhere in the city that links to a certain page. The visitor can come in through Google or third-party websites. So you also have the websites of happening this week in Rotterdam, for instance. Maybe they come in through that third-party website. So it's important to know how they come in to make sure that they find the right way. And I usually recommend start at the end. So you want to focus on the end goal. What is the goal of you already determined what is the goal of your story type, of your content, and focus on that end goal. That's where you want them to end up. If the end goal of telling a story is eventually buying a ticket to an event, make sure that the event is first in place and then work your way back. So then at the story type, maybe add a banner on the homepage, but start at the end and then work your way towards the start of the visitor flow. So determine the flow of target audience is linked to the first one, because if you know where they end up, you can determine how they get there. Try to avoid with that creating content circles. So when you go to a production page, for instance, I want to go to a specific production and I search on Google for that specific production in a theater and I end up on a production page and then I see an article about an interview and I go to that interview and then I end up at a different page about something else about that production. I can be lost in a content circle where you can just click on new articles all the time. So try to make a straight line from the place where they come in and to the end goal of your strategy. Because otherwise the visitor can get lost and just keep on clicking on different articles. Group the content types. So it's also part of the strategy. So if you have news items, you can create a news page, but you can also have pages where you have all the content listed. So the visitor has everything in one overview. And it's good to determine that from the start. You can always always change it up later, but it's good to have it there from the start. And I always recommend make decisions. Don't do everything. Because if you have too much, the visitor will get lost in one of those content circles, or they will just get lost in having too much information. So make sure that you have this all in place before you start working on the stories. And make sure that you have a clear path for the visitor to get from the story to the end goal. Or maybe the story is the end goal, which is also fine, but make sure that that is clear for the visitor as well, that they have the final goal there. The content structure. If we dive right in, there are 3 main types of content. That's important to understand when we're going to link them together, because it can get confusing really fast. So do note that there are pages, productions, people. Pages you already use, well, most of you do, where you have your general pages about visit the theater, frequently asked questions, all the general pages you have. If you define them with the story type, that page turns into a story. So there's no difference between a page and a story besides giving them a definition, which is similar to giving a production a genre, basically. So you give a page a definition, you give the page a genre, and therefore you group them together, and it's easy to link them to other pages or to highlight them on other pages. For the productions, that's what we call everything that is an event, where you can find more information, which you can actually visit. It could be pulled from your planning system, but you could also manually upload them or create them. And you can link the 2 content types together. So the pages and productions can be linked in multiple ways together. And we have the people module. Like I said, I'm not going to explain too much about that, but it's good to know that it's an overview of person, which can be an artist, musician, an author, someone working for the theater, whatever you want that person to be, and link them to productions and pages, and also highlight them on a page as that person did an interview, created a production, and have that automated as well. But the main content we're going to focus on today is the pages and productions. Oh, I see that the agenda order is a bit different than the actual story, but it can be linked together in multiple ways. So like I said, for a production page, you can have related stories, which can be trailers behind the scenes, but it can also be used, for instance, for accessibility pages where you want to give more information about what you're doing for that production specifically. You can also show the people, so the cast members or any other person related to a performance, and you can link them together with one click, and then automatically it will be linked in various ways, and you only have to update the information on one specific page. You don't have to go to all the different places to update your content if something changed. So also the timing of the parts or the pages can be done in the page itself, in the story itself. So you don't have to worry about that later on. Another one is what I briefly mentioned, is that the people module. If you want to know more about the people module or anything else about how to link with what I talk about today, also feel free to send in a ticket in the service portal for any specific needs you have, or if you're ever stuck. But the people module is an overview of the stories that the person is linked to, or a performance that they star in or that they created. So you can link it in various ways, and therefore it's important to start with the strategy to make sure that everything is linked properly and that the visitor knows where to go next. I will show you in a bit how that looks in the dashboard, but it's good to understand that there are 3 types of content here. If you're linking on a content page, there are 4, or actually 6 parts that I want to cover today. Mostly talking about the suggested stories, the related productions, and the event list options. Those are the 4 parts that I'm going to mostly focus on, which is for a content page. And when I talk about the content page, that's the story page. So if you have the story page, you have the suggested stories and the related stories. The suggested stories is manually selecting a few stories that you want to highlight, because you suggest those stories for the visitor. And you say, if you're interested in this page, you're also interested in this page, where there are 3 or more suggestions for the visitor to continue reading, basically. The related stories are the story types you want to highlight. So those are related items. Those are automated, so you can just select that part and then it will automatically take everything from the same story type, but you can also highlight another story type, because if you feel like they are on a podcast page and you feel like they also are interested in the videos you created, you can easily highlight that with the related stories, which are related to the story they're actually reading. For the related productions, that is about linking them together, linking the 2 types of content, so the stories page and a production page together. If you want to highlight it on the content page, you add the part related productions. And if you add the related productions to the page, it automatically also shows on the production page. So you have it 2 ways. So when you're on the production page, you can read more. As a visitor, click to the stories, to the story itself, and read a bit more about that. But also the other way around, when you're at the story page, you can see, oh, this is about this production and I want to buy it. So you automatically can click on buy tickets, and you put it into your cart. The event list is another way to show productions. It's similar to the suggested stories. So we have 3 types of event lists. Therefore, I said I'm going to talk about 6 parts, actually. So the event list is a general one you can add, and then it will take all the events you have, but you can also make a filter with the parameters. I'll show you in a bit. We can also use parameters for that to only show events on a specific location, or events that are from a specific theme, or via the people module. So all the events that are linked to a specific person. So we see it a lot, for instance, with orchestras, where you can highlight all the events that are with the same conductor, for instance, because you know that people are searching for that conductor, so you can create a list with all the events that a person is actually part of. So if we immediately go to the customization of those things, we have the parts. We already talked about that a bit, where we're gonna talk about the building blocks. So the parts is what we call the building blocks. So every page is blank, basically. And you have all these little building blocks that you can stack together. You can change the background of it. You can put them straight on top of each other. You can add them sideways. You can make them full width. You can make them box. You can move them around every way you like. And that's what we call parts. And that makes up your page's content. So that's your story. We have a lot of parts that you can use. So we have a media gallery video part, like I said, the iframe part, the events ones. So every page can look very different, even though you use the same parts, but you can also move them around and make sure that every page is similar in a way. So it's up to you how to orchestrate that. That's why the strategy is so important, because there's so much flexibility in the parts and the pages, and also in the stories itself, that it's important to keep the focus on what you actually want to tell and how do you want to show that. So if you look at the page of last season, the season before, 22-23, from the National Theatre in The Hague, they have a page here on the right-hand side, which is an example of how you can use those different parts to give the illusion that some things are linked together, even though they are separate parts. So the header has the same background, the header image has the same background color as they use for the first parts. So therefore it looks like they have all these little images on top, but actually it's one image but with the same background. And they have a title and a button there. Then there are two different parts next to each other, one with the media gallery with 3 tiles and one with the media gallery with 2 tiles. So it gives the illusion still that it is one big part, but they're actually 2 separate ones. And you can click from the season page to I want to see everything from next season in one of the 3 locations. And then the second section with the 2 tiles shows if it's a National Theatre production or if you want to go out with the family, so see more child-friendly performances. So you can also determine for your visitor how to combine the content. So if you know what they're searching for, if you know a lot of people, they have a very loyal audience to a specific hall, you can show only the events based on that hall. Or if you know that a lot of people are searching for cabaret at your theater, you can also link them to a page or a filter with that information. This is the same page, but it continues a bit. So they also have a description part where they have a little bit of information in the form. And they then have a description part with the pink background. So there you can see that it stands out because it's a different background color, which is also something you can change yourself. And then again, a media gallery with some general information. So even though there are a lot of parts on this page, it looks as a whole, but they're still used all the different parts there. The parameters are the ones that you use to customization. So if you look at the different parameters we have, there are a lot. We have a manual there where you can see a bit more of what is an option. If you ever have any additions to the current parameter list, so if you feel like you're missing one, or if you just want to know, is this something that is possible because I have a certain strategy and I want to highlight it in a certain way, just feel free to reach out so we can help you set it up. Or maybe think of other solutions, how it can work for your strategy as well. So just a little sneak preview of what is an option. So we have the different animations. Oh, that link didn't work. It should have gone here. So that means only on desktop that there is an animation behind the image. So when you hover over a certain image, that there's an animation there. That can be also done on specific pages. This is their homepage, but it can also be done on certain pages if you like. If you look at the story slider, there's also one on the homepage, but this one is, for instance, full width. And this one has news articles, while this one has let us guide you, basically. So there are different story sliders, and you can have the different arrows there with parameters. You can make it full width or more boxed. And also there's a filter bar. which you can see here, and you can determine if that is visible or not. So if you only want to create a news page, only news will be highlighted and there will be no filter bar, but maybe you want to highlight news and stories, verhalen in this case, so stories. So you can determine if that is visible, and if there's a limit here, if it's a slider, or in this case, if it's a grid, all that is part of the parameters. The arrows are you already had a sneak preview there with Theater Rotterdam, but also here, so you see the same bar, but now it's a slider instead of a grid underneath. So you can have a different arrow style. You can have flat banners, which means text is underneath the image, with banners, but also with certain cards. Or you can have the white version, so everything is full width here instead of boxed. Also for the sliders. So there are a lot of different ways to customize it. You can also have a filter type. I'm not sure if everyone knows that this one exists, but usually it's the bar, like we saw here. That's the default filter bar, but you can also use a parameter to make this some sort of genre look and feel for the filter bar. And the related content can be done in multiple ways as well. So here you see that there is also visible, also playing in Amara, and then all the events that are coming up where they feel like if you're reading this article, you're also interested in, and also other stories that are related there. So these are the suggested stories because they're manually selected, because the theater expected that if you're reading about Direct, that you're also interested in the Dolly Dots or Balthazar or the other articles here. I will show you in a bit how to actually set that up, but it's good to know that all the options are there. And then I will also look at the backend with you guys together. So here we have a few of the best practices. You already saw the Speel de Dakker off. So then we're actually going into the backend of things. So first things first, if you want to create a story type, you need to go to the story types. This is the overview of all the story types that there are. And what you saw here for Amara, you see that the terugblik has a little icon there. You can also see it, let me see, on the stories overview page here. You see that every different story type has a different icon. That's something you can control yourself as well, and you determine it for each story type. So if you want to create a story type, which could be news, could be anything else, you go to stories, story types, click on add, and there are actually only 2 fields here. So the name is visible for the audience, is the one you're showed online, and the description is like a dashboard note, so it's easier for you to recognize what it actually is. So it will be visible in this overview here in the description, but it's not visible for the audience. The display on website checkbox is by default on, which means that the audience can actually see it. But you can also determine that the story type itself is only used for you guys to group it in the stories module. So they will show up here on the left-hand side, but it's not visible for the visitor online. So then this bottom part won't be visible for them. And if you add a media icon, that's the icon that is linked to that story type here. Might be a bit unnecessary to say, but do note that you add a PNG file so that there's no background in there, because sometimes I see a little white box there. So make sure that there's no background in the image when you upload it. In this case, it's white on white. If that would have been the case, that would have been fine. But some cards don't have the white background, so it's good to keep that in mind. If you're going to create a story type, let's just do one here because it's not visible, luckily. Test webinar. I want to display on the website. Let's also do it in English. It will show up on the left-hand side. Your pages overview here shows all the pages you have. So if they have a story type or not, all the pages you have will show up at the pages overview. And if you click on the specific story type, here you see every page that has a specific story type that you clicked on. In this case, I just created it, so there are no pages with that story type. But if we're going to add a page and call it test a webinar story page, and also in English, because I did it from the story type itself, it already selected that story type, but you can have multiple story types there. I'm not going to add the other ones there because then it will show up on the live website and we don't want that. So the test webinar is the only one I'm adding now, but you can have multiple if you want. So in this case, we're going to save it. You can add a publication date here, which you can show on the page itself. And otherwise it's used to order the pages to make sure that the latest content is always in front. So we'll look at the content of the date that you created the page, but you can override that by having a different date there. If you have a publication date, so let's say today at 8, it doesn't determine the visibility of the page, but it will show up on the page if you set the checkbox to show that, which is in the hero part. So the hero part is the top part of the page always, so it's always with default there. So what you see here is that there's an H1 here. We recommend always filling in the hero H1 because that's good for Google, but also good for screen readers because the H1 is the most important title of the page, so that it will be recognized by screen readers, but also by Google, that that is the most important title. So if we say here, test page, then you have the checkbox here, the display extra story type. If you enable that one, it will show the story type on the page if you have a visible story type, and it will show the publication date that you filled in. So what we did now is creating a page, like you're used to, creating a regular page, but we defined it as a story type test webinar, and therefore it shows up in the test webinar. It's not visible because of the visibility to know. It's also good to use the dashboard notes for this one. This is a test, which is only for internal use, so you can have a clear overview of what it is, what the page is, which is not visible for the visitor. So sometimes you want to have a title of the page that is visible for visitors a certain way, but internally you want to know this is only for the golden friends or something like that. You can also do the same for the parts. So when I add a description part, for instance, here you also have the dashboard note option. This is only for you, which is not very helpful, but you can set it up any way you like. So there's a dashboard note here. And you see the visibility here is both of them are set to yes. In this case, the whole page is invisible. So you have the visibility checkboxes like you have here on the page level. So now at the page level, set it to yes and no. I think that speaks for itself. We can also use the advanced one, where you can only show it to specific visitors, hide from specific visitors, or have it visible from a certain date or until a certain date. You don't have to fill in both. You can also only use one of the two so that you can time it ahead of time, or you can say I want to make it visible straight away, but after Sunday it's not relevant anymore, so I want to remove the content again on Sunday. And here you also have the option allow indexing. If you set it to yes, it will be allowed to index, so make sure that Google picks it up, but also that your search engine can pick it up. You can also set it to advanced, allow indexing to no. So then it's more like a hidden page that if you have the URL, you can find it, or if it's linked somewhere, you can find it, but it's not that Google or the search engine will pick it up. You can also do that on the page level, on the part level. So when I go to that description that I made, let me go back to no. If you go to a part here, you have the visibility yes, no, advanced as well. So you can also hide it for certain visitors or certain times on a part level. We recommend using them on part level, because what happens if it's set to no and you open the page, like I have done now, it says page not found. Set to English. Page not found. Oh, wait. Page not found. There we go. And you don't want to show visitors page not found if they just simply need to log in, because if it's the personalization of the parts is used with the visitor tags, we need to recognize the visitor. I can only recognize the visitor if they are logged in. So then it will be more customer friendly to say we make the hero, for instance, visible for everyone. Then we have a description part, which is only visible, which is hidden from, for instance, the supporter, where you explain a bit more. If you don't see the content, please log in and you can find the information you're looking for. If you're not seeing the information and you're not a friend yet, be sure to become a friend of the theater. And then you can add another part. So we have this one only visible for everyone except for the supporters. And then you can add another part there. It's another description part, which you can say this is only shown to the supporters, for instance. So if they are logged in, they will see this one, but they won't see the information about logging in. And it avoids people from seeing the page not found option. So you can just set this one to yes, because the general audience will only see the first part, and the second part is only visible for the supporters itself. So we already dove right into the personalization bit there. But let's do one step back to the parts I explained before. I was talking about the related productions. So what you have here is that you can link related productions to the page. And then we go back to the example of direct. So if we look at the back end of that, what you see here is that there are 3 productions related to it. And you will see that there is a related productions part. If you link them together, it will, on the direct page, or the dire space experience, or Sommieu, on all 3 production pages, it will show this story, because you link them together. So the story is shown on the production page, because you link the production to the story. Let me close a few tabs here. So if you go to the direct page, you will find at the bottom, in their case, it depends on your settings on the production page where the stories show up. But we can move them around if you like, or give them a different background. And in this case, you will see that the article that we just watched is here as well. And you can also continue to other stories there. And then you see other concerts that are also linked to that. So that's where it becomes confusing, because everything is linked together and you can just continue and dive deeper into the content there. Most important is that this is the content page, the stories page, and we link together the direct production. So on the production page, that story shows up. And if you add the part related productions to the page, the related production will also show up on the page itself. So this is the content page again. And here you see the related productions part. If you're not sure if you're seeing this on your own website, and you have the special access here on the right-hand side, you can also check, if you don't remember what part it was, you can also check it by clicking on the parts, and you'll see there's a red bar above the part you're looking for. So the related productions one is this one. And if we go to the suggested stories one, we see that this is this one. And they add a little description part in there as well, you can see here, which is the more stories, basically. So the title is a separate part, and just stories is a separate part. So if you're ever in doubt what kind of part it was, again, on your own website, you can use the special access for that as well. So in this case, related productions, because direct production page is linked to the direct content page. You can also see here the related productions part that it's empty. You can only choose the slider or list option and use the different parameters there. If you want to link the content there, so the other stories, so we already covered that suggested stories is the ones you manually select, because you're suggesting manual stories to them. So here you see that they linked 3 stories there. And if you go back to the content page, it's this one, to the suggested stories one, you see that these 3 are also here. So those are manually selected stories. If you want to show everything that has the story type terugblik, in this case, so looking back, basically, you could also add the the stories part itself. So the stories one here, and then select the story type terugblik. In this case, there were 3 articles they want to highlight, so they used the suggested stories one. If we look at another example, it's this one. This is an interview. And they have a lot of content here because it's an interview with the maker of her new production. And you can see that it's it's one in the past, but then you can also go to the production page to buy it if it wasn't in the past. And it's also linked the other way around. So if we go to the content page with the interview, what you see here is that it's story type interview. It's a related production, is the production you can actually sell from the maker of the production, of the interview, sorry, and the production, both. And there's related production here as well. So linking it here means that it shows up on the production page, the story shows up on the production page, and linking it here means that the production is also showing up on the story page. Another example we already briefly saw is with this banner. Here they have the different photo reports. So you can have the photos, but also stories here and all the different items. This page highlights, it's just a page without a story type, because this is an overview page, so you don't need a story type for an overview page. And there is a stories part here. You can either select none, which they did, and if you select none, it will select everything. Because then we determine if you don't select anything, you want to show all the stories, so then these stories will show up. But you can also determine that you only want to highlight photo or stories or podcasts, and you can add them like that. That's what we also saw at Amara. Because if you look at these ones, there are 2, 4, 6 story types. But if you look at their backend, they have more story types. So if we look at this page, you will see that the stories, they have selected only these ones to show up. And another example is, in this case, a winter circus. It's about the full program of a festival, and they have all these different events here. It could be done in different ways. You can highlight them, for instance, with a theme, with related stories, related productions, or with the event list and select them on location, for instance. In this case, the content needs to go both ways. So they linked the productions to the page itself. So on the production page, also the link to this page shows up. So on the production page, you can go back to the story and back to the overview of all the information here, with also the location info where they use an iframe, and also more information about that. So it is both ways. And then they chose to have the related productions here with the layout of the list. You also see that there are different parameters you can add and different background colors here. So you can link them all together in that way. So important to remember is that there are 2 types of content that are relevant for now, if we not look at people. So you have a production page and a content page. So linking them together is with the story type. So with the story type is grouping the content pages, linking them together with related productions. So story type is to group it and to highlight it easily on other pages. So just say, on this page, I want to show everything with story type news to create a news overview, and related productions can be used to have it both ways. So I have the story on the production page and the production on the story page. We already covered it a bit with the personalization and with the visitor tags. So I already mentioned in the beginning that visitor tags can only be used when you're integrated. Integrated means, can you log in on the Peppered platform? So you can easily recognize that with if you go to login. In this case, I'm going to a different URL, because this is theaterdebussel.nl. If I go to login, it's Theater de Bussel. But if I log in on Tixley, I will be recognized as a visitor on the website. And in this case, I am recognized here, because when I click on this, I remain on the Theater de Bussel. So now you can use visitor tags for that visitor. It can look different for each theater, depending on the integration. So for Amara, this is fully integrated, so it looks like a different overview. These are the visitor tags I already have. It looks a bit different than the one that was showed here. But if you are logged in and you are recognized here with your initials, and you can click on it and you remain here, then your integrator can use visitor tags. And if you can use visitor text, you can personalize the content. The timing of the content can also always be done. So if you integrate it or not, you can always use the timing of the content, parts or pages. It is a bit more about the personalization, but I already showed you in the dashboard side of things. That was a brief overview of the stories. I have to admit that it will take a few tries to just link everything together, and therefore it's so important to have the structure in place before you start working on it. But are there any questions?
Cool. Thank you, Liesanne, for your wonderful talk. Just giving everyone another minute or two in case there are any further questions. But otherwise, that was really insightful. Thank you. And we'll have the recording up in our CultureHub following this for anyone that does want to rewatch or share with colleagues, etc. Cool. Yeah, doesn't look like we have any questions, Lise. So with that, we will say a thank you very much to our audience, and we'll see you all next time.
See you next time.